Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Scott, and today we're going to be painting the Telemon Heavy Dreadnought from the Adeptus Custodes in Warhammer 40k. So let's go ahead and dive into how I've painted this model. To get this model ready for painting, I've primed it using Retributor Armor Spray Primer from Citadel. Now the first thing we're going to do on this Dreadnought is we're going to use Leadbelcher to pick out all of the weapons and structural parts of the Dreadnought. This includes the joints and any of the spots that we think should be this darker silver color. We're going to pick out the tubes on the side of the torso using Iron Warriors. This is a darker silver and it's going to give these tubes a slightly different shade than the Leadbelcher parts that are around it. Once both of those metallic colors have dried, we're going to use Contrast Basilicanum Gray to shade all of the metal. Now since this is a contrast paint, it's important to not go too heavy as you do run the risk of just turning all of your metallic parts black, and we don't want that. Once we've allowed the contrast paint to dry, we're going to use Stormhost Silver and we're going to edge highlight all of the metallic parts, and we're focusing on just the edges and anywhere that we think the light would catch because we want those parts to shine more. Now it's time to move on to the golden armor. We're going to start by shading it all using Seraphim Sepia. And this shade is going to seep into all the recesses of the armor, but it's not going to ruin the gold tint that comes with the armor. It's going to maintain that yellow-orange appearance that comes with the gold. Once the shade is dried, we're going to use Gehenna's Gold. We're going to dry brush this over all the gold armor panels. This is going to return our gold to a somewhat oranger tint than it had before. Now we'll bring back Stormhost Silver, and we're going to dry brush this, but we're going to focus on just the edges of the armor panels. We're not trying to cover the whole armor panel, but we want to make the edges look like they've got a little bit of weathering to them. Now we're going to begin working on the shoulder pads. Now I previously primed these with a white primer. I'm going to take Cantor Blue and use this for the base color on these shoulder pads. And this may take a couple coats. Make sure you thin this down so that you don't get ugly brush strokes and streaks on your shoulder pads. Our next step is to shade the shoulder pads using Drakenhof Nightshade. Now you can go nice and thick on this if you'd like, because we are going to cover up a lot of it in the next step. With the shade all dry, we're going to dry brush Macragge Blue over the entire surface of the shoulder pad. Now we're focusing on letting the color be stronger towards the center of the armor panel, but leaving it somewhat darker as you get closer to the edges of the panel. Now we're going to use Stormhost Silver, and we're going to paint this on all of the edges and all of the details on the model. This includes several aquillas, as well as a handful of just random ornamental details that have been placed on the model. We're also going to pick out all the rivets. Once we've picked out all the details, we're going to shade them using Seraphim Sepia. This is going to bring the silver a little bit closer to that gold color that we started with, and it's going to help blend it in so it doesn't pop quite as much. While that shade is drying, we're going to take Leadbelcher and we're going to pick out all the support pieces that go on the bottom of the shoulder pads. We're also going to clean up any spots that we feel we overpainted with our dry brushing on the structural parts of the Dreadnought. Now we're going to begin picking out the vents of this model using Mechanicum Standard Gray. And while we're at it, we're also going to paint a couple of these rings that are on the tubes on the side of the Dreadnought. Once that gray is in place, we're going to shade it using Nuln Oil. You want to go nice and heavy on this because this is a vent, and we would expect there to be smoke and exhaust coming out of this vent, making it dirty. Now we're going to take Corax White, and we're going to pick out a couple of the tubes and cables that are on the model. Now these are going to end up blue later on, but we're starting with white to give a good solid base for the color we're going to do next. The next thing we're going to do is take Contrast Talazar Blue, and we're going to wash this over those tubes that we just painted with the white. This is going to give those tubes the appearance of being a glowing blue, almost as if they were plasma conduits. Now we're going to pick out the barrel of his weapon and a couple other details on the weapon using Balthazar Gold. Next, we're going to shade that Balthazar Gold using Seraphim Sepia. This is going to fill in the recesses, but it's also going to brighten up the metal and give it a somewhat bronze appearance rather than a copper look. Now we're going to take Contrast Black Templar, and we're going to fill all of the vents that are on the armor panels of the model using this color. Now I've chosen to use a contrast paint rather than just a normal black paint, because this flows a little bit easier, and it's easier to just remove it with your finger if you overpaint the vent. Now we're going to take Abaddon Black, and we're going to paint some of the structural parts of his weapon. This includes the back of the weapon, as well as the barrels between the two sections of copper we did before. Once that's done, we're going to take Psychorax Bronze, and we're going to highlight all of the edges of the copper areas that we did on his weapon earlier. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take Mephiston Red, and we're going to paint all of the tips of the missiles that are coming out of the missile pod that's on the top of this model. While we have our red paint out, we're going to go ahead and do the eyes. Now there are 4 steps to painting the eyes. We start with a base coat of Mephiston Red. We then shade that using Cardboard Crimson. We then highlight the center of each eye using Evil Sun Scarlet, and a very fine highlight using Wraithbone at the very center of the eye. We're also going to pick out the gems on the model at this point. We're going to use Temple Guard Blue as the base color for those. I chose to keep my gemstones very basic, so I've used Wraithbone, and I just put a couple white dots or lines in the spots where the light would reflect off of the gem. I also did a dot in each of the lights that are on the top of the model. For a quick final detail, I chose to highlight the edges of the black panels on his weapon using Thunderhawk Blue. And with that, we finish this Dreadnought. Thank you so much for watching today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, go ahead and like it, and then subscribe to my channel so you can see future videos. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.